Hello and welcome to the Claret and Blue podcast, sponsored by NordVPN. And for all the information that you need to get yourself a VPN, the link is in the description down below. I'm your host, Dan Rowlinson, and I'm joined by Alex Barker today from The Athletic, a football scout, European expert. What do you want to be labelled here, Alex?
Nothing too big-headed, please. It's just a guy who watches too much football. That's the best.
Okay, we like that. We had your colleague John McKenzie on a fair bit, and he watches quite a lot of football as well.
Oh yeah, no, he's too big-headed, don't they? No, he's too far.
We won't praise him up too much until he comes on again. We're here today to talk about Evann Guessand. We did a video, me and John Townley, a live stream when Villa were, he was going to come and have his medical, and we kind of did our initial reaction. And as always, when Villa sign a player, we do that. And then we get someone on who's seen a little bit more of him than a few highlight reels to tell us the pros, the cons, the kind of the lowdown, everything you need to know about Evann Guessand. You did a Twitter thread in April of this year. Your account famous, I would say, for these threads, deep diving into them, almost like an article in themselves. There's so much detail. And for anyone watching or listening, I will link the thread down below. If you're on social media, go and have a read through. But what's your general instant reaction to this? Because back then in April, you said this would be a good pickup for somebody. Does that feel like a good fit for Villa, do you think?
My immediate reaction was, wasn't this guy going to Crystal Palace?
Or Wolves.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, off the back of those rumours, when I saw the link to Villa, and it was, like the other links, the kind of more rumours, this one, my colleague Jacob Tanswell jumps in it. I was like, oh, okay, this is happening. I was like, this is not necessarily what I expected, because Guessand, as we'll get into, he exploded last season. He played as a right-sided 10 in a 3-4-3. So the links to Palace and Wolves, especially Palace, was like, okay, this makes a ton of sense. It's just you pick him up from one system, put him straight into basically the similar one, and he should do very well. Villa, I thought, not quite sure how he fits as cleanly into this team. And it was only when I thought about it more and actually remembered that Villa aren't a 4-2-3-1 on paper. There's a lot more to how their system works. I was like, well, actually, this makes a lot more sense. And so first reaction was, a bit confused. And then I kind of came around to it and was like, Villa have done something smart here.
In maybe not last season so well, but the year before when Leon Bailey had the best season of his career, arguably, or certainly the best season at Villa, he's a right winger that will hold the width, whereas Guessand is not going to do that. So instantly you think the fullback has to bomb on. Dropping him into a 3-4-3 or 3 at the back system at Palace does make sense, and you think, well, Villa start as a 4-2-3-1 effectively. You got Watkins and 3 behind, Ramsey, Rodgers, McGinn, Bailey. Guessand will be one of those options somewhere. But in possession, you do see Villa drop into a kind of a back 3 with maybe Kamara drops into the right back and Cash will go forward. So in possession, Villa do kind of display a kind of 3-man system at times, and he will probably play on the right in that kind of half space between the fullback and the centre back and kind of cause havoc with Rodgers, I would suspect. I don't see it being that Rodgers is your first 10 and Guessand is your backup and he'll rotate with him. Guessand specifically could probably play any of those behind the striker. And if Watkins is injured, could probably do a job up top as well if you needed him to.
I'd even go as far as to add, I think he might suit the striker role more than maybe the left-sided 10 role, just for quite niche reasons we'll get into. As well, like with Marlon, I think there's the potential to play Guessand as the number 10 down the middle on paper with Marlon on the right, and then when Ramsey or Rodgers on the left comes inside as the 10, you get 2 10s there. And I think like the right as well coming inside. We're on the same page. If there is basically where Guessand thrives, that sort of right-hand sided half space. But he's been described as a versatile player, and I think like that definitely holds true. I think I ended like my thoughts on him when I last scouted him, basically saying I can absolutely see him playing as just an out-and-out number 9 in future.
That's really interesting because there will be life after Watkins at some point at Aston Villa. And if if the kind of succession plan is, okay, maybe Watkins leaves next summer and Guessand can play in behind him this year, but fill in for him. It's almost, John Townley, our Villa writer, said that it's almost replacing Rashford, but not on the same side. That Rashford isn't really a winger and he's not really a centre forward, and he's this kind of weird mix of both. It's kind of that same profile, but for the other side of the pitch. Lots of Villa fans, will never have heard of him before this recent link, may never have watched full games of him. I've seen a few highlights reels and think he looks pretty good, but most players do. As part of your process, you've watched enough of him, and far more than probably most people listening to this.
I think this is a good opportunity of just being completely transparent, because I've said it elsewhere as well, where I'm aware that the thing that fans really end up hating most, it's actually the thing I hate most, is when you see, people who label themselves as scouts or analysts online, and they say, yeah, this player that your club signed, he's a worldie. He's going to be. You've signed the next Ronaldo, and he's
That's what I want to hear.
It's what you want to hear. But when that player inevitably has flaws, and there's things that you're let down by them, you go, oh, well, this guy who told me that he's a perfect player, he's just overhyping them, and you do see it is popular to be popular on players and positive on players. Yeah. No one really wants to critique them, because if you're critical on players, it's negative, and nobody likes someone who's negative. And I say this because my opinion on Guessand for a while has been extremely positive. I think it's the most positive on any player who I've scouted this year, and that includes the likes of like Xavi Simons, Benjamin Sesko, two players moving this window, Hugo Ekitike, who's gone to Liverpool. And now Guessand isn't as good as those guys yet, but for reasons that become clear, is a reason why I had maybe a bit more negative things to say or critical things to say about them than I did Guessand. And before I get into that, I'll just quickly open up on the process. It's a good question as well about how much of you watched him. So I think it's also interesting how I discovered him. So I am one of the few people on planet Earth who are very interested in Ligue, absolutely love it. So earlier this year, I just, as part of like my scouting hobby, I'm going to watch a few Nice games, which typically tends to be like 5 to 8 games. Watch them in bulk and just like note down their tactics, what they're doing. So if they ever become relevant, I know what to talk about. Yeah. And Guessand, I just carried on noting down really positive things. This guy looks really good. Like, note him down for future, Alex, to give a proper look and a proper scout. That proper scout consists of like watching a couple of full games, and then using like scouting software I have, you can go through like clipped highlights. So you just watch all the events he has in a game, every time he touches the ball, every time he makes a run, just going through that, which is like 5 to 8 games. And then at that point, I've got enough of a foundation of this is what this guy does on the pitch. This is broadly what he's trying to do. So you've got a nice tactical understanding, where he's on the pitch and why he's not always hitting the back post, for example, or why he always seems to be far away from goal if he's dropping it deep. You just get a good understanding. And after that final part, it's a case of watching every shot he's taken over the last 2 years, every dribble he's taken this season, every attempted cross, just so you can really nail down his technique. So how good he is as a finisher in certain scenarios. So that's the background I think I'm going to hopefully offer here, of really trying to understand Guessand as a player, like in a tactical sense, in a technical sense, an athlete, and the context of Nice as well.
Yeah, that's really nice, because you always just kind of hear like, well, I've watched 90 minutes of Nice, and it's like, well, yeah, but how often has he like touched the ball during those? Like, you've watched a lot of other Nice footballers while you've been scouting this guy. So the fact that there's software out there, and Y Scout and things like that, that here's the thing that he did, and it'll play like a 6-second clip, and then it'll just be done. And it's like, you actually watched everything he did specifically, though. Like, it's not about watching the team. Obviously, some of that is relevant. You need to see where they fit into a system, but to see like every action that he's been a part of is far more than probably most people have listened to this. You reference a enjoyment, maybe for want of a better word, of Ligue. It's one of the top 5 leagues, but is it the 5th? Premier League, La Liga, Bundesliga, and Serie A are 4 bigger leagues than Liga, and I believe. You might disagree. What do you think the transition process is like from that league to the Premier League?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Liga is a league I've been following since the start of my career in football. I think it's a very big reason how I even got to the stage where I'm at. So I always have a bit of love for that league. At the same time, I'm a psychopath who watched every Marseille game from the past season over the period of a month. So 34 Ligue games over about 3.5 weeks. And after that, over the past 2 weeks, I've been watching every single game of Como under Fabregas in Serie A. I am very much living in a comparison.
Who's better, Como or Marseille?
Good question. Marseille better. Roberto De Zerbi, I actually came away with a lot more respect for, which I didn't expect. I feel pretty confident in measuring these different leagues. And what I'd say with Ligue 1 is one reason it's always ranked as the top 5th league is because in UEFA coefficients, it just is, because it's never really done particularly well in Europe. That's not a reflection of the league as a whole. That's a reflection of PSG continuing to flounder. And really short answer, and one less European space in the league, which means fewer teams in Europe, and those teams are often fighting over it and not able to sustain themselves in Europe. So the teams don't tend to do well in Europe, and that represents the quality of the league. Whereas there's been a lot of research that shows on the Athletic as well, Ligue 1's a very balanced league in terms of quality outside of PSG. So the bottom teams, for example, they are capable of fighting against the top 4. Whereas in leagues like La Liga, for example, it can be a very top-heavy league. So that's just in terms of quality. Why I think Leo's Ligue 1 down, I would actually say it's still of the top 5. You could argue in this sense it's definitely the last. Tactically, I think it's only recently where we've had some really nice managers come into the league of being modern basically and bringing new things. It's only 4 years ago, I'd say, most of Liga and still played 4-4-2 and hadn't really evolved as much as the Premier League, for example. I think it's still the furthest behind tactically the top 5, but I genuinely argue it's up there with the Premier League in terms of physicality. There's a reason Premier League teams keep buying players from Ligue 1 because it is the most physically intense league of the top 5. You don't even have to believe me on that. Mauricio Pochettino and Lionel Messi both said similar things when they joined PSG a few years ago. I think Messi even said it's the most physical league in Europe. He can't say anything. He didn't play in the Premier League, so who should trust him? But
what does he know?
Exactly, right? It's easy. He's playing in MLS. Who cares now? Anyway, it's right to have concerns. It's always going to be a transition coming into the Premier League, and there's no surefire way of guaranteeing he'll work out. But in terms of physicality, I don't think that's where he'd be let down. It'll probably be maybe in other areas of just getting to grips with the tactical demands of the league. For example, pressing. Nice are a team that don't particularly press high. That is something Guessand may have to adapt to at Villa, even though they don't always press high as well. So there are smaller things. It's not as simple as he's playing against worse players, so when he plays against better players, he'll do badly.
There's an extremely long positive section, you say, and that tweet about his positives is humongous. It's a written article in a tweet. Please go and read it, because I'm not going to read it all here. I'm going to read out the 6 positive bullet points you've picked here, and then I want you to kind of highlight his technical qualities, I guess. Guessand is a handful in all ways physically. He has a good understanding of positional play. He can assist teammates in clever, unexpected ways, which I like the sound of. He makes dangerous runs into the box. He can evade markers, and he adds value defensively, which I think is really interesting, having looked at some of his numbers. You mentioned his pressing then. We spoke about it again on the previous episode that we did, that his kind of closing down metrics, or however you want to describe it, kind of winning the ball back high up the pitch, he is good at. So if Villa do play in that way, he's such a kind of physical asset that he's going to be kind of defended from the front as a forward player, which is quite unusual. I think you marry that with Morgan Rogers, who's also a big lad. Ollie Watkins is pretty big and strong, to be fair, and he's a hard worker. It feels like Emery's building a different mould of system there. When you hear all those positives, and it's from a massive list of them, what does stand out as his biggest trait, do you think? He's the thing we should be most excited about, maybe?
So I know the answer for that. I do want to quickly highlight the what's the word? The honourable nomination thing. Honourable mentions. There we go. Just because when we talk about Guessand's weaknesses, what I'm going to refer to a lot is the mental side of his game, and I think that can paint him as a bit of a dumb player. I really want to highlight before I talk about his biggest strength, the one you mentioned there, his understanding of positional play. He's such an intelligent player on the ball, like when your team has the ball. I did a video on him for my work, The Athletic, where I recommended him as a sensible transfer to Crystal Palace. And there's a sequence in that where he's looking to receive the ball near a defender who's marking him. He fakes to run in behind and just instantly switches back. he makes it look effortless, but he sends the defender the complete wrong way, which means he can receive the ball in a bit of space, turn and carry forward. He's someone who just knows how to manipulate defenders. He knows where space is, and it's going to be so helpful for Villa when you're trying to unlock like low blocks. Having someone who can spot that little bit of space,
something we're bad
at. Yeah, there you go, right? And receive the ball in that bit of space to make things happen. So I just want to highlight that. I'll quickly say the biggest strength is his strength. That when I say he can like handle everything physically along those lines. In the thread, it's something I expand on. And again, to talk about my process quickly, I copy the FA sort of prescribed way of scouting players, which is to look at how they perform tactically, how they what they're like technically, basically how well they interact with the ball, think how they shoot, how they pass, how they dribble, the psychological aspects we mentioned, and the physical aspects. And I follow that for every player I scout, and Guessand is like one of very, very few who just ticked every box physically. He's quick enough to like overtake players with pace. Like he can knock the ball past a defender, race past him, and leave him behind just through his raw speed. So he may not be like an Aaron Lennon, for example, but he is like very, very quick. He's very strong as well. A bit of background on him: he came through as a winger at Nice, and then he says he just had a massive growth spurt and grew to 6'1", and that's when coaches started moving into striker because they were like, well, you're wasted out wide, right? And it's good that did seem to happen quite an early age, because he's not just someone who's like strong. He's someone who knows how to use his strength. He's something I always look at for attackers is can they resist challenges? If someone tackles them, are they going to be thrown off balance? Guess on someone who will throw defenders off balance. He's someone who could barge into them and just send them flying, which is like a really great turning the tables moment. So yeah, he's very strong, very fast, but also the agility. I've said
sounds very Rodgers to me.
Oh really?
There's elements to Rodgers here.
That's a nice way of put. I think this helps the Rodgers comparison actually. With the news about Guessand to Villa, I went back and watched him again, just like little bits, thinking I'm probably going to watch him again and think, I was a bit overhyping him, like maybe I got carried away. I came away more impressed.
Yes, love that.
The thing I was more impressed by was his agility, just because I've watched a lot of players since him, and like sure, there's some players who are going to be more agile than him. Xavi Simons, he's like almost 2D. The way he could just change shape.
There's something about it, isn't there? When it's big players, I think when it's big physical 6 foot plus players, it almost feels like they shouldn't be doing things like that.
I think we have seen a lot of big players come through who are actually quite graceful. I think Nick Voltemada in Germany, but I think that line of he does things he shouldn't be able to do with Guessand is really true, just because it's not that he can just like move his body gracefully and smoothly in a way you wouldn't expect. It's the speed at which he does it, man. Like he's someone who's just like I mentioned earlier, that clip I highlighted in the video where he's making a run in behind, and in a second he's actually dropping in deep, and the defenders just can't recognize that movement so quickly. So yeah, physically just an absolute powerhouse.
I was excited beforehand, having known very little about him, but the more I've started to learn about him, he's one of those that you kind of describe as like a one to watch, even like across the whole league. It's a good fee. It's with very little fanfare, really, in the sense that even the transfer itself was Villa are linked. Oh, they've signed him like within a day or whatever. It's very under the radar. One that people might miss, and then see him like playing well against Newcastle on the opening day or whatever. Like, ooh, he's good. How did that happen? Where's that come from? To flip that, let's do some negatives. As you said, there's always negatives to players. There's always downside, cons, whatever you want to call it. However, going back to that thread again, there aren't many that you've highlighted out there. Obviously, there will be some. There always is for every player. There's always room for improvement for even the best. But if you had to highlight a negative or something to be concerned about, what would the main one be there?
Yeah, this is a nice moment to tie back to what I said before. Of there's a reason why I have more positive vibes, let's say, on Guessand than I've had on other players I've covered. I remember I covered Unai Emery, for example, and I titled that basically saying that I really love Emery. I think he's a fantastic player, but he's in danger of getting quite overhyped. He has some clear weaknesses, some he can improve on, some that are just limits. And yeah, I think Emery is a better player than Evann Guessand. It's nothing to be ashamed about. But there are limits to Emery's game. Like, he's not particularly strong. I don't think he'll ever be a striker who can play with his back to goal. I say this because when I look at Guessand, there are negatives, but there aren't many that I think are limits. For example, I just think there are things he can work on. So the main thing there is decision making for me. I think it's not bad decision making, it's just slow. In the thread I talk about Guessand, two things which I actually think roll into one. Guessand taking a long time to shoot, and Guessand being like quite a poor dribbler. Not a poor dribbler technically. He's, as you've kind of hinted, very agile player, very skillful. He can take players on very easily. It's just he'll overdo it. Like he might beat one or two players, and if we keep going, not release the ball, and you're like, just release it. Like this is the perfect moment. And inside the box as well, I think you just can be guilty of taking too many touches, trying to set himself up for a shot. When we mentioned John McKenzie, he did some really good research last season where he looked at Premier League strikers and just measured how long it takes them to shoot, just not in touches. Not just touches in seconds. Haaland tops that, no surprise. The best strikers take the least time to shoot. Guessand takes a long time to shoot at times because he's just taking too many touches, needs to just think quickly and bang, take the shot. So decision making is one. The other one is, I guess, like shooting in general. He has only scored one goal from outside of the box. I think when he's up close, there's a lot to appreciate. He's someone who can chip the keeper, use his laces to power it. In fact, he loves pelting his shots. And also like plays shots as well when he's closer to goal. He just, the one thing I think he really struggles at, and maybe this is more of a limit, is he just seems to struggle generating a lot of curl on his shots. And this is a reason why there'll be a temptation to play him off the left because he's right-footed. And you think, okay, cool, right-footed player, cut inside, shoot into the far corner. That's what everyone does. But this is where like the niche side of analysing a player comes in. This just isn't something that Guessand has ever really excelled at, because those shots where he's trying to cut it into the far corner just tend to go quite straight and go quite wide. He's much more comfortable, despite being right-footed, playing on the right and being able to shoot a cross goal, be that with the inside of his foot or pelting it with his laces. So it is why in his career he's generally actually played off the right. It's a bit of a limit, and that is a weakness worth considering. I just think it's not too much of a massive issue because, as I said, I think he pretty composed in front of goal, can finish in lots of ways. There's a really lovely chip to goal against Marseille earlier this year that's worth watching. And B, he's also a really smart player in terms of movement, like we spoke about before. He just consistently gets into really good goal scoring opportunities. So it's almost a bit like Ollie Watkins. Ollie Watkins, if you look at his XG, he's never been a hardened like finisher, just continuously scoring goals from insane situations. It's about consistently getting into position to score no matter what happens, and you will turn a lot of them into goals. And that is the sort of thing that Guessand does.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not boiling down everything you said there into one thing, but like almost like a weakness is he wants to play on the right. Well, we need a player on the right, so there's a space for him. It's coming straight away. There's one kind of final point I want to bring together, and it's we touched on this in the previous episode. For anyone who has watched our initial reaction in this, I feel like I'm probably repeating myself a bit, but we're here for Alex for this one. Why didn't a bigger team come for him yet? Is always the narrative, isn't it? When you've signed somebody, like, well, he can't be that good, Alex, because Real Madrid haven't come for him, or Manchester City or whatever. Well, firstly, Villa are operating in a different market this season because they're not in the Champions League anymore. And in your thread, one of the last tweets was, maybe an elite Champions League team doesn't come for him yet. This was in April. But there will be a team between that and Nice who could get a ton of value out of Guessand as a number 9. Now, kind of part of the number 9 thing for now, let's just say some club gets a ton of value out of him, full stop. We aren't a Champions League team at all this season, and we're not an elite one either. But Villa are better than Nice, right? I think there's no bias to suggest that. So there is some value there. There is something for Emery to kind of look at based off the criticisms that you've given him, sharpen him, make his decision-making better, kind of educate him is the wrong word really, but kind of chewing him up a little bit. There's something there that can be worked with, that he's a 25, 30 million pound player now, but with the right tutorship and guidance could be a 65, 70 million pound player to a Chelsea in 5 years' time because of his profile and because of the assets that he brings.
Like, to go back to that first reaction, which is a totally fair one. Oh, this guy's so good, then why didn't like Chelsea go and sign him? And like the answer isn't like
it's almost a strange narrative that, isn't it? Because there was a lot of people like, oh, I've never heard of him. Well, I hadn't really heard of Morgan Rogers when he was playing for Middlesbrough, and he's one of the best players for us last season. You know, there's always a bit of that. If anything, that's on us as fans. it's my fault I haven't heard of him. It's not because they're no good. It's just a weird thing of, you saw Yuri Tielemans left Leicester on a free, deemed not good enough, or whatever you want to say, was our player of the year last season. We were told he was unfit and not ready for this level anymore, and he's played so many minutes, his legs will be gone. And it's like, sometimes things don't work out for certain clubs, or certain managers won't go for this player. If Emery spotted something in him, it's a good profile, it's a good price. It feels like an opportunity signing rather than we've nabbed him away from top teams. Like, we've kind of taken a gamble is probably the wrong word, but you know what I mean? Other clubs like a Chelsea, they're operating in a market that is probably above this.
I also think as well, much of it comes down to position. We said at the start that he'd been linked to Wolves, he'd been linked to Crystal Palace, two teams that play a similar setup to Nice. And this is still a concern. Like this, he playing in a 3-4-3 and adapting to a back four system, even though Villa do shift, right? But that there is going to be a thing of, okay, like, are you still going to thrive in a slightly different position? Even if we think it will be similar, are you going to adapt? Chelsea will look at him and think, like, let's even imagine they don't have Cole Palmer for a second. Let's just imagine that. Like, they'll look at him and think, okay, you tend to play quite a bit on the right, but for our number 10, we want them to actually stay through the middle. This isn't something you do as well as, Xavi Simons, for example, just picking a name out of a hat, right? They're more likely to go to them because they'll be more sure he will fit into their team. So I think a reason that clubs wouldn't have gone for him is like due to that. It's the positional fear of he's going to have to come from a back three system to our team. Have we got a home for him? Especially because, as I said, I definitely don't think he's going to make it to the top level as an out-and-out winger. So that kind of eliminates him there. I think he can make it up front. We'll talk about that later. But like that's still kind of theory, right? He's not really shined as an out-and-out number 9 across a whole season. He's played as a number 10 and a 9 in the past season as well. So it's just these fears of like trying to fit him in positionally to the team, which has probably held other teams back.
Yeah, let's do that striker chat now. When Emery signed Marcus Rashford in January, the line was kind of, he's not really a number 9 and he's not a winger. He's this weird kind of mix between the both. We expected him to play off the left and Ollie Watkins up front. Then it got to some big games and some big decisions where Ollie Watkins was sat on the bench while Marcus Rashford was playing up front. Guessand, we've spoken about, can kind of do both, and you feel like he could become a top 9 at some stage, whether that's, Villa have signed him as a 9. I don't think. I think it will be playing off the right, but maybe there is a plan there for him to be Watkins' successor in the future. What do you think is required for him to be that 9? And what's the kind of immediate future for him, do you think? Are we going to see times where Watkins is on the bench and Guessand's playing the main man role?
More than anything, it will just be consistent minutes as a number 9. That is something he has lacked throughout his entire career. It's only last season he really became a starter at a club. I think the last time he played substantial minutes was at Nantes on loan, and he played as a right winger there. So it will be playing up front and knowing what runs to make and all the different things that Unai Emery is a master of implementing with strikers, as he's proven before.
Good with strikers, isn't he, Emery?
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. So that will be it. I think when you might see him coming as a number 9, and the reason I think ultimately he could play there is down to that physicality. I think he offers, I think he's very good with his back to goal, holding off defenders with his strength. He's got an exceptional first touch, and he's a very strong passer as well. Something that goes under the radar is creativity. So I think he'd be used as a player, and maybe when Emery wants to go a bit more direct, maybe build up a bit more direct, not to say always going behind and just drag his team up the pitch. Guessand is maybe somebody who can make those runs in behind, carry the ball forward, or receive his back to goal and bring others into play. And also as well, again, you spoke about before, Phyllis fans have spoke about before as well, of struggling against a low block and trying to create chances there. I think I was talking about this with John the other day, actually. When people think about how we're going to unlock a low block, I think the vision everyone has, right, is, well, we either need superstar talent or we need to be like Barcelona under Pep, where we're just able to pass away through. We're like magicians, like one touches and breaking away in. Breaking down a low block isn't like one of the other. There's lots of ways you can do it. I think Arsenal, for example, are often a pretty grim attacking side to watch, but also quite good at breaking down a block. Their plan is, okay, we will just pile the back post with players who are good at winning headers, and we will cross the ball into them and we will end up scoring goals. It's not pretty, but it works. And I think with what Guessand can offer Villa in future is someone who can win those headers, can dominate in the box.
An outball in that situation.
Yeah, and he could be a target man, essentially, someone to cross the ball into. He scored, I think, 2 headers last season, both from set pieces, a corner and a free kick. So I think that goes to show straight away, look, he is someone who, if a ball comes in, even a hopeful ball, he's capable of turning it into a goal.
Just a couple of final points. What do you think this signing does for those existing players? Is it going to hamper Rodgers' minutes, for example? I don't know how much you've watched of Villa, given you watched all of Marseille's fixtures in a month. Like, have you had time to watch any of Emery's Villa or not?
I watched you guys last season. I've not watched your pre-season games, but I mean, it's inevitably going to limit minutes, right? But for who is the question? Because who's to say Guessand doesn't come in and does okay, but actually pushes Rodgers and Ramsey to become even better? It's always as simple as they just take their spot in the team. But yeah, Villa will bring them in, Guessand in, because they think he can add to their attack. And yeah, I will say as well, like, this is more of just my personal theory, like slightly off topic, but I do think Premier League teams, what we've heard for years, especially in sort of the Guardiola world, is you need a small squad. You don't want too much competition. You don't want players getting annoyed. You don't want players left out and unfit. You need a small squad, maybe 8 or so players reserve who can cover different positions, not like 2 players per position, right? I think that's changing just because of A, the number of fixtures, and B, linked to that number of injuries as well. And a lot of teams have suffered that in the last couple of seasons. You look at Chelsea building a massive squad. You look at City adding a lot of players as well too. And even Arsenal, like, you think, oh, how are they going to fit Gyökeres, Havertz into the same team? Or Liverpool, how are they going to fit Ekitike, Isaac, like Frimpong, all these players into the team?
Yeah,
I just think the answer is there are so many games to go around. You don't need to fit these players into the team. It's fine if Guessand or Rodgers only start 17 games, because they're still going to rack up like 30 appearances or 38 appearances through subs. There's always a fear this is going to limit my favourite players' game time, but when you get to the end of the season, you do end up actually seeing players still playing substantial minutes. And I think that's the reality we live in now. His famous last words, Watkins, he hasn't got injured yet. And
mate, if people say all the time, oh, you've jinxed it. But firstly, that's not true. It's not a thing. But if he was to get injured, it's not my fault. Obviously that'd be bad. But is that not most clubs that aren't Liverpool, City, Arsenal? If Everton's striker gets injured, they'll be in trouble, right? Like, that's pretty much everybody.
Yeah, it's fair enough.
Right, I'll let you go in a sec. One kind of prediction. I always do this. I don't know why. We get like an expert on to tell us the pros and cons for these players, and then I'll just, for the fun of it, what's actually going to happen? You've talked a lot about what could happen. What's going to happen now? Your colours to the mast. Is he going to score 15 goals? Is he barely going to kick a ball because he's actually not very good? Like, what's genuinely your prediction here for what this guy does for Villa?
So I think first season we see Guessand, like, maybe there'll be a bit of adjustments to Premier League. I think there will be a period where Emery tries to find like the best position for him. That has seemed to be a process that has happened at every club. Even last season where he was great, there was a period of time where he's shifted around a little bit. So maybe a slightly slow first season, but I still think he hits over 10 goals and assists. I'd like to think in his second season, once the qualities are understood and he's really found a home, so we're thinking 2026, that's going to be a really strong year. And I reckon, for the hell of it, like, that the 26-27 season, that's when you start seeing the Sky Sports headlines ramp up. Evann Guessand, like, he's come from nowhere. Manchester United, Man City, all linked with £80 million star. I think that's my prediction for how it's going to go.
One thing we have to mention very quickly, it's Wednesday evening as we record this when Villa are playing at Warsaw, and Morgan Rodgers has come off with an injury scare. So let me just read very quickly what our colleague John has written. After going to ground in visible pain, Rodgers received medical attention on the pitch. Villa staff examined his ankle, or appeared to examine his ankle, before helping him to his feet. He briefly jogged in an attempt to continue, but soon shook his head and signalled that he could not carry on. So it would be remiss of me not to mention that, because this video will obviously come out after Warsaw because it's happening now. So, I mean, again, what it means for the players if Rodgers is out for a period of time, Guessand's going to come in and be playing straight away because there's absolutely a space for him. There's a space for him anyway, I believe, in that he'll be replacing Leon Bailey, I think. But if Rodgers is to be injured for any period of time, and again, touch wood, hopefully he isn't, we've kind of made a signing that helps that if Rodgers is to be injured.
Yeah, your recruitment team is so good, they soar into the future and they've worked it all out.
I really hope that's not serious because he's on course for a big season, Rodgers. I think I really rate him very, very highly. Okay, that'll do for this one. Alex, thank you very much for joining me. It's been a blast. I really enjoyed it. Learned absolutely loads. I will post that thread in the comments or the description or somewhere. If you scroll down, you'll see it. Go and have a proper read of it. It's really good stuff. Have you enjoyed your Claret and Blue podcast debut?
Oh, absolutely, man. I want to get on board Villa content next season. It's often an area where I actively try and watch Villa games throughout the season because it's easy to become a blind spot and easy to get focused on top six, or in my case, random Ligue 1 teams. So I hope this isn't the last time I come on here.
No, absolutely. If you've spotted something and you want to come on and talk about, or we need some help explaining something, we'll give you a bell and try and get you on again. It's been an absolute pleasure. If you've enjoyed watching along or listening to this episode of the Claret and Blue podcast, then do get in touch in the comments. Subscribe to the channel and all those usual things. It really does help us grow as we approach the new season now. It's rapidly approaching, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how Villa develop this season. Thank you, Alex, for joining me. Thank you for watching or listening, and we'll see you again very soon.